Greetings, Patrick here, 8 questions with, and we are here and we have a show. How about that? Director Frank Merle will be here with us in about 15 minutes. And yeah, we have a lot of questions for him. He's done a lot of things, a lot of fun projects. As a director, he's gotten to work with Tony Todd in his new movie, Namaka. I got to work with Jamie Kennedy, and I do believe our friend Mike Markov, I believe this is his brother Jason, that's starring in Namaka, and we'll find that out soon. Yeah, that would be interesting. I was like looking at that, and I'm going like, this just can't. They look like brothers, and then the same last name. I'm going like, I think they are brothers. So we'll be talking with Frank here in a minute. Um, and about his film. Namaka would not only features Jason Markov, but also Ash Ty, Jamie Kennedy, and David Howard Thornton has a role in this film. So pretty star stacked, I think. Quite honestly. It is a cool story, and it's actually I'm thinking about that. The reason I'm thinking about Mike's brother, he's doing a Hawaii mythology story. Namaka is actually a part of Hawaiian culture. It's the older sister of Pele. Uh, and I got thinking about this, and I'm reading about it, and I'm watching the clips and whatnot. And I'm going like, and Mike did a movie called The Little Mermaid, which is based on another mythology about the mermaids from the sea, and he did one. So that was pretty interesting that both brothers did a similar type story, um, and with really, really strikingly beautiful girls in the lead as well. Uh, so yeah, so Frank will be here shortly. We had to reschedule Andrea Garces Lopez. She'll be back here on next Wednesday, and it's actually pretty exciting news because uh, by the time we talk to her next week, she'll made her pitch. She got called to rehearse her pitch. Uh, that's where actors or producers and try to get people to help them out with their projects, and so you got to make a pitch for it. Like, here's this, this is what we can do, and this is our plans. This is what we think the movie's going to look like, and all that. And you're trying to get the person you're talking to believe in the same vision you do, to come on board and bring some cash with you. So um, it's not the easiest thing to do, uh, but like I was telling someone yesterday, I think I was talking to our friend, director Tremaine Hayho. I was sitting there saying that she is really focused, and she's focused. She's determined. She's hardworking, and she's got a motor. She wants to go somewhere, and I think she could. It's one of those things where you meet somebody and you like, yeah, I can see it happening. Um, some other news here came out just a tad bit early. After a long slumber, um, and but I see our good friend Michael Cassie is back in the mix. He has formed a film company called Stoic, and they are putting together projects even as we speak, including one with Stephen Lang in it. And I know there's two movies that he's gotten in the pipeline. One I saw, I'm not even sure I could even mention it still because I don't know what happened to it. So I'm gonna, it's a good one though. It's a good story. And then he's got another movie that they're gonna be working on too called Mercy Good. And that's gonna be a supernatural thriller, which I'm glad to see because Michael can really write good supernatural stories. So congratulations to him. When the time is right, I don't know when that's going to be because he's been very, very busy, very busy. Yeah, he just pulled the plug, and went down and has been taking care of business. So glad to see him back up and running on his feet. Um, I can't wait to see what he's got for us coming down the pipeline. Uh, so I guess there was some hoopla yesterday from Dean Cain. Dean Cain, you might remember him. He played Superman for 4 years, the New Ventures of Superman and Lois. Um, I have to admit, and this may not just probably not a popular opinion, of course, but man, I got I didn't see it until I read this, but now that I have, I can't unsee it. But they were saying how the girl who's playing Supergirl, Millie Alcock, um, that she looks like Chaka from Land of the Lost. Yeah, that's harsh. I, I've covered it. I watched and covered the Land of the Lost for Dollar Theater, so I know what Shaka looks like. And damn, that he was not too far off. Um, I mean, they should have kept Sasha Cali. Okay, if they're going to keep a Supergirl, they should have kept her. She was amazing in the Flash. I really really liked her Supergirl a lot. Um, Not the prototypical, like Laura Vandersloot uh, played in Smallville, and she was breathtaking in that in Smallville. But they didn't go with that look. They went with a more non-traditional look for the Flash, and it worked 100%. Sasha Cali was amazing. And so when they said that James Gunn was going to take over the DC movies, there was high hopes that he would keep her for any new Superman movie going forward. Well, just like he did with everybody else, he got rid of them, and he cast this girl, and now we got Shaka because that's exactly what she looks like. She, yeah. I know everything's saying we're jumping on the bandwagon here. No, no, I've been saying that about Supergirl, this new Supergirl. I didn't think she looked the part in the slightest. I think she looks terrible. Supergirl looks terrible, actually. It might be one of those cases where Lobo steals the picture. His character is going to come in and just own it. I'm not enthused for it at all. Uh, just don't think it's going to do that well. I just don't think people are going to connect with her. And now it's out there that she looks like Shaka from Land of the Lost. I think it's going to hit even hard less. Um, I don't know what possessed him. I don't know. Get that ask James Gunn. I mean, it was his call, and I don't know what he's thinking. And I mean, harsh on Zack Snyder all you want, or Patty, who brought out the first Wonder Woman, but they had an idea how to cast their characters. Now, it's not exactly their fault that the Flash didn't work out. Who knew that kid was gonna was had bass in his belfry. But they had a Superman, they had a Flash there in Grant Gustin, and they didn't need they decided not to use him. So you know what, honestly, they still could have used Laura Vandersloot, to tell you the truth. They didn't, or Sasha Cali. They could have used either one of them in Supergirl and would have passed. Because Laura looks amazing still, amazing, and Sasha looks great too. So, but yeah. But I guess people are roasting on Dean Cain, saying he was the worst Superman, and blah, 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 blah. Look, Dean Cain was not the worst Superman, not the worst, not the worst. And Terry Hatcher was not the worst Lois Lane. Actually, I thought she did pretty good as Lois Lane. I Yeah. So can't harsh on them there. Um, yeah, that's a good question though. It's like, man, that's one show. I mean, the only thing I can sit there and say that the Superboy series that came out for God, now that was the worst Superman. but he played Superboy, but that was the worst one. But I think that was a combination of not a very good actor and extremely low budget. I mean, that show looks horrible. It could be a companion piece to the Greatest American Hero. With the if you go back and watch that show was dated before it even aired. It looked terrible from the first episode on. And so did Superboy. That was just I was amazing it lasted as long as it did. I think it lasted 3 seasons, maybe two to three. I was amazing that it did. But Dean Cain, yeah, he might not be the nicest guy. He might be the one of those. But worst Superman? No, I can't go there. I can't agree with that. Yeah, can't agree with that. All right. Let's break out the calendar. I got my new peepers on here today, and man, I am having a hard time seeing them. Oh, the chat is flying here. Eric's here. All right. And Jamie is here. And she will be. She will be here July 2nd. We're going to be talking with Jamie Hill once again. Let's see. Dean laughed at a joke. He didn't call her ugly. We all laughed at mean jokes. Yeah, yeah. You know what? That's what I said too about that one. And you know how I feel about that. But I'm agreeing with you on that, Eric. And I'm agreeing with what they said. That girl looks like Shaka from Land of the Lost. She just does. She, Shaka will get buried. The only thing he needed was a cape. I don't know. Like I said, I, they just that's who they cast. I just didn't get it. I just didn't get it. I should have kept Sasha Callie. Let's see. My daughter is super excited for Supergirl. We could care less about the haters. I don't know about haters. I think they're just making an observation. Dude, I mean, she does look like Shaka. It's not being a hater, it's just what she looks like. It's just how it is. So, and they're playing her way too cynical. I mean, it's just like, really? Do I don't. And of course, they cross pollinate characters again. You know, Jason Momoa played Aquaman, and then it's like, okay, well, I don't want you to do that anymore. But oh, by the way, can you come over and play Lobo? And yeah, I think he's probably gonna do really well. Jason Momoa, he leaned into the superhero role. I mean, he leaned into it. He really liked playing the role. You could definitely tell he had a lot of fun playing Arthur Curry, and and he'll have even more fun playing with Lobo since that's DC's answer to Wolverine. Healing factor, super strength. The only thing he doesn't have is adamantium claws. But Lobo is an interesting character. He's actually a very interesting character. Um, he can't be killed other than by someone of his own race, and he killed his entire race. He's the last. He's the last one. So he's in fact immortal. Well, that's what they say, but if the Spectre wanted to come in there and say something about it, game over. Let's see. So my peepers are just I got new peepers. The lens are just fogging up constantly. I can't get it clear. So I'll be magooing here. Oh man, this is just terrible. I think we're gonna have to go back down there and tell him that these are not working. I think these lenses are plastic. I don't even know if they're even glass. Let's see. Fuzzy Adventures is here. Greetings, greetings. There's Anthony. See, Anthony got himself in trouble. I saw that. Um, so let's see what is happening. What's opening up this week? Disclosure. Oh, well, gonna welcome our guest Frank Merle. Merle to come on in.
Hi.
Greetings. So we're talking about Supergirl. I guess there was a comment made that she looked like Shaka from Land of the Lost, and it's, it's funny because I'm sitting here and I have that show. I reviewed it. I grew up with that show, and I never thought about that. I thought that when I saw her, and here's our Supergirl, and the only thing crossed my mind, Frank, was I wanted Sasha Cali to continue the role, even
Right.
though she wasn't the traditional Supergirl look, blonde, slim blonde hair and everything else. I thought her take on Supergirl in the Flash was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want her to be Supergirl going forward. Of course, James Gunn walks in there and shoots everything up, and and cast Millie Alcock in it, and
Yeah,
this is
it's
it's
a
it's
shame
it's
that they don't have more continuity in these comic book worlds, right? You know, like
yeah,
maybe the Flash, maybe all the pieces didn't come together and then they blew it all up, right? But I agree with you. I mean, there were some of that stuff worked.
yeah. If yeah, it's a shame about Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
But even then, I was like, okay, so he's crazy. So why don't you reach into the bullpen and bring out the closer that you
Right.
have sitting right there, and Grant Gustin, and not miss a beat. But they decide, well, we're going to go with him anyway, even though he's batshit crazy, and it's like, and it cost them the whole movie because
Yep.
nobody wanted to see Ezra Miller.
Yep.
Um, so, being a director and a casting director of your own films, I mean, I know we talk about casting, and sometimes even I lose track of just how completely important it is. I know some of the bigger studios, they do chemistry tests. Some they just don't. I mean, James Gunn, I'm sure James Gunn handpicked this girl to play Supergirl, and you know, the less said, the better. But it's just like casting is just so critical to make the project work. You have to think not only. Now tell me if I'm wrong, and if I am, if I'm speaking out wrong, please tell me. But I think that casting's like two tiers, right? One for the story, one for the film itself,
Yep.
and two for the public eye. I mean, there's a reason why we cast certain people in certain roles in big movies, is because people really want to see those faces looking back at them.
Yes, I completely agree. I love working with a known quantity, when I can. Absolutely. But they have to fit the role. The one of your favorite actors in the wrong role, and that's no fun either, right? So it does have to be I think that should be the first consideration is who's the right type for this role. And a lot of times when it's early on in the casting process, a casting director might say to the director, well, who, if you could cast anyone, don't worry about the money. If you could cast anyone, who would you cast in this role? And that is a way to, sometimes you'll, oh, well, gee, if I could cast anybody, I'd cast Brad Pitt. Well, if it's a big budget movie, they'll say, well, let's go try to get him. Or if it's not a big budget movie, then at least the casting director understands the type now. Okay, you want a Brad
Right.
Pitt type for that role. Yeah.
Right. Instead of costing us $20 million,
Yeah.
we might be able to get them, the Brad Pitt type for a
And
million in
that's
same
right.
budget.
And that's right. And maybe you discover the next Brad Pitt, right?
You know what? It's interesting you say that, because when I was looking at Namaka,
Uh-huh.
and I saw that your leading man was Jason Markoff, and I'm looking at Jason Markoff, and I'm going like, I'll be damned if he does not look like another actor named Mike Markoff. And I'm thinking those two look like just like brothers.
Yep,
Yeah, so they are brothers.
they sure are. Yep.
You, you know, I've had Mikey on the show before, and I've talked to him off camera several times. I don't think he ever told me that his brother was in the business.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, yeah. Did you know that? Did
I
you know
did.
he had a
I
brother?
did. I did. I knew about both brothers. I knew about Mike before I cast Jason. I had actually worked with Jason many years ago when we were both in Chicago. We did a short film together, and so and I knew Mike was doing indie films and that kind of thing, and Jason was doing more theater work, and so he wasn't much in the spotlight. So I was thrilled to give Jason this opportunity in this film.
Yeah, it was so cool too. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching this and I'm going like, now and here I am watching this and going like, man, this is he looks just like Mike. And I'm going like, it's not his brother. And now they're doing a movie similar because Mike did a movie. He did a movie based on the Little Mermaid.
Right.
And
Yeah.
with Lydia, yeah, with Lydia Helen,
Yeah.
and then Mike was doing, Jason's doing the one with um, Namaka, and I thought that's what a coincidence.
Yeah. Sure thing. I think they're doing a movie
Uh,
together now. Might be their first time in a movie together. I don't know much about it. I saw online that they were in something. So that should be coming down soon.
you've got a really interesting body of work. I mean, I was looking at your credits, and I'm going like, and when we first started talking, and you mentioned that you did a movie called From Jennifer,
Yep.
and and of course, you got to work. You worked with two horror legends, absolute legends, and Tony Todd, rest in peace, and uh, God, went right to my brain.
Is it
Uh,
Malcolm McDowell?
oh, that'd be three. I was thinking about
Yeah.
David Howard Thornton. David
Yeah.
Howard Thornton, Art the Clown,
Yeah.
from the
Uh,
Terrifier movie.
Yeah, these I'm a big horror fan, and I know that these guys who get to be very well known maybe for one particular role, I find a lot of them enjoy an opportunity to work on something very different. Like I did 3 movies with Tony Todd, and I got to know him very well, and got to talking to him about 9 out of the 10 projects he would be offered is they just want him to do his Candyman thing, right? Show
Yeah,
up and be scary, and that gets old after a while for him. So
yeah.
the three movies I worked with him on, all of them were very specific different roles that he got to experiment and play different types, and he really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, that's what I love to hear. I mean, and all fans, we love to hear that for them because, with me, I was really happy to see that David didn't have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
He's always wearing, he's done the makeup for Art, and then he came back there and did one for, he played the Grinch, the
Yes.
evil Grinch, and then I think he did one other movie where he had to wear
Yeah, it was
mask.
evil Mickey Mouse, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you know what?
Screamboat.
Right. And how that when you go ahead and you cast things like that when in movies like that, do you keep them do you sort of carry, are your bookings ever done with compassion in mind, or is it always just the very best movie? But do you sometimes, like you said with Tony, then you got to know him and you go like, you leave him and you're going to yourself, I'm gonna find a role for that man that is goes to his abilities and not stereotype. I mean, do directors ever come out of there with that kind of fire and brimstone? Like, I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna make the act like you had Derek Mears, and
Yeah.
and now Derek Mears is he's been typecast for a long time as like Jason, but he and Man Thing, but or Swamp Thing, but it seems like the last few years, directors have gone out of their way to make sure that he doesn't get typecast, and they give him speaking roles.
Yeah.
And he's a really good villain. Holy shit, he's a good villain.
Well,
Um,
it took a lot of lobbying on his part. You know, he's had to go out there and say, I don't want to do this same role over and over. You know, and he was, you know, a lot of what he did prior to Jason was, you know, stunt work, right? And but I knew him as a really good actor. I knew him from improv, you know, here in LA. And so I knew he could do it. And so now that he's getting a lot more speaking roles, I know he's a lot happier doing that. So yeah, I mean, you know, casting, actors want to act, and they want good roles, and so that's the fun part of casting, is when I'm offering something, whatever it is, you know, whether it is, you know, oh, you've played a similar role to this before, or hey, here's something for you to do different. Hopefully any role I'm offering, I think is I think it's a good role. Otherwise, why would I be doing it? You know, and you know, there's no small parts, only small actors, and so you know, you know, David Howard Thornton in my movie, he only did one day on Namaka, but he knocked it out of the park. We had a ton of fun doing it, and now he and I have been talking about doing something a bigger project for him, where you know maybe he can come in and do something, you know, play a lead for me next time. So. Yeah, I mean, you know, compassionate casting. I've never heard that expression before, but yeah, absolutely. I think about those things. Uh, that's what, you know, one of the fun things about this job.
well, I guess the other way I call it is the Howard Hawks casting. You know, Howard Hawks always used the same actors. You know, he had his acting troupe, he had the
Yeah,
Rolodex. Yeah, I mean, there's that way. You have the Rolodex casting, but I think sometimes, I think in this case, you know, with you know, with Tony and David and you know and Derek, I like to think it is, you know, it's not, it is compassion book. You know, it's like we're going to give these guys who are beloved by the horror film community, but we're going to give these guys a chance to shine in some speaking roles. You know, well, Tony does that all the time. You know, he
sure,
did that all the time, but
sure.
Derek and David not so much. But you come in there going like, you know, people are going to discover who these guys are, other than, you know, beyond the mask, you know, beyond the makeup. And as a fan, thank you. You know, thank you for
Sure.
casting them and putting them in roles that you know, that aren't you know what they usually play.
Yeah,
Um,
you
you
know,
know, 'cause that-
I have fond memories back when, you know, I could go down to the corner Blockbuster Video, and they would have, sometimes there would be a section for the actor, right? So there'd be the Bruce Willis section, an Al Pacino section, a De Niro section. That was really a treat, because then I could do a little education on you know, some on one particular actor's body of work, and you get a lot more appreciation for how, you know, some of these actors, how great they are, when you see how different they can be from one project to another.
yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, I know a lot of fans. You know, they stick to their hardcore you know, favorites. You know, there's enough movies out there. You know, action adventure fans. You know, you know, they generally tend to just go gravitate to there. You know, it's very rare, you know, or you know, or comedy or anything else. I think people who go to the movies, I think a lot of times they just go to, you know, what they know, what they're comfortable with. You know,
Right.
when you go ahead and tell somebody about a new actor, it's just like telling someone about a new movie. You know, it's like here's a new director coming along, there's a new um you know, a lot of people won't necessarily. I mean, it makes it harder to market the movie in one sense,
Yep.
because a lot of them won't. You know, a lot of people won't go see it because it doesn't have any familiar names with it. It's like who are these people? And then
Yep.
they, you know, and it's like, wow, that's what gets me more than anything else when it comes down to horror movies. God, I mean, a lot of these movies, a lot of the fans, they can never, horror fans can never get out of I mean, they're typecast. They typecast themselves. You know, the only thing they know, or the only thing they know or acknowledge, maybe Romero or Fulci.
Right.
That's all they know. It's all they'll talk about. It's like, and you go there and you go like, but have you seen Namaka? Have you seen this? Would you look at it? Take a look. Let me know what your opinion is, and you'll get people going like, is it like Scream?
Yep.
You know, um, but of course, when you do got horror icons in your movie, like you did, I mean, it does make it sell a lot easier, and you can forget, and what I really appreciate is you got a lot of new faces in there. A lot of people that don't know Jason Markoff or Ash Sai. You got them in there. Now they're new faces. I mean, now that I've seen them work, now I know what to look for. Now I know, like, yeah, I want to see more of what they can bring to the table.
Right.
Because I like seeing young, fresh faces.
Right.
As long as they don't look like Shaka. You know.
Yeah.
So so let's get back to your roots, because as people can already see, you're very outgoing and you're very energetic. And I watched some interviews that you did, and you have a lot of energy, a lot of and that's a really good thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I do what I love, so that gets me out of bed every morning. And
I mean, a
and I
lot.
try, and when I am lucky enough to be in production, I run a pretty happy set. Like, there's a lot of laughs going on, and I treat, cast and crews with respect, and people have a good time working with me, and that pays dividends down the road, right? As like I said, I did 3 movies with Tony Todd. Well, if he was miserable on the first one, he wouldn't have done 2 more. Right. So,
Right.
that's yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that there is no right personality for a filmmaker. That's something I figured out early on when I first moved to Los Angeles in '09, to really sort of pursue this full time. And the first thing I did is I started going to as many Q&A screenings because I wanted to hear from as many filmmakers as I could. Um, and everybody, they're like snowflakes in how many different personalities there are, right? There are some very quiet,
Right.
thoughtful, speaking to the mic better. And then there's, very boisterous, loud personalities, and everything in between. There's no one right type of filmmaker, right? And different people come to it for different reasons, I think. And but yeah, I pride myself in being someone who brings positive energy to the things I do, and I believe that pays off on film. Right. So if people are having a good time, and especially, some of these, when I do work with the name actors, Derek, Malcolm McDowell, David Howard Thornton, Tony, Jamie Kennedy. These are people you've seen in a lot of movies. Sometimes they knock it out of the park. I don't want to say sometimes they phone it in, but sometimes they're miscast, and
Right.
and so you sit there and you sort of scratch your head and you wonder, how come they're better in this movie than in that movie? I think some of it is how much fun they were having behind the scenes. How much the energy they bring, because they have to get up in the morning and put their pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else who shows up on that set, right? And I've been on some other sets, some other filmmakers, and maybe because there's so much pressure, you're spending a lot of money and everybody's looking to you for leadership. But some filmmakers, man, when they'll get in a bad mood and they'll stay in a bad mood, and then it becomes a real chore making the darn thing. So then you might see one of your favorite actors, a Pacino, a De Niro, or whatever, and you might see one of these movies, one of these indie films, this low budget movies, and you go, oh, that was just, they did it for the paycheck. They must have done it for the paycheck, right? Because they don't have that spark that I'm used to seeing them. Um, no actor's doing it they're not doing it for the paycheck. There's easier ways to get paychecks. They're hoping every movie they sign, if it's Nicolas Cage, one of these guys, Bruce Willis, these guys who do a lot of movies, they're not doing it for the paycheck. They love acting and they want to be on set, and they're hoping that this is going to be one of the good ones. That's what
Right.
That's what drives them. And so my job as a filmmaker, when I'm lucky enough to work with a name actor, a known quantity, I mean, when I worked with Malcolm McDowell, he already had 400 credits. So I knew I wasn't going to teach him anything about filmmaking, you know, but I was respectful. We had some good laughs, uh, and so I ended up getting a great performance from him. Billy Zane, another actor, that he just he had one scene in The Employer movie I did many years ago. He knocks it out of the park. I think it's one of the best freaking things I've ever seen Billy Zane do. We were having
He's really underrated.
Yes, a great actor, wonderful actor, and so, but he's got to be in the right environment. If
Yes.
you're, if everybody's in a bad mood and people are shouting at each other and you're running late and lunch is, you know, mm, uh, inedible, you might not get the best performance out of the guy.
Yeah.
So when you see the final movie and you go, well, gee, this, all the pieces didn't quite come together on this one. I wonder what happened. There's usually something behind the scenes going on, and I like to think, maybe this is just me as a filmmaker, but I like to think it starts from the top. It's from the top down. Part of being a director is the leadership that you bring to it. So that everybody, whether it's the lead actors or somebody who maybe it's their first movie or just even the crew, that everybody brings passion to it. They're looking to you. They're looking to the director for that spark. And if everybody, if they see that I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and then they're going to enjoy what they're doing. And I believe that there's a something magical that's going to get captured on film that's going to translate to a better movie if the people making it enjoyed making it.
Now, how hard is it as a director? Is it more difficult to direct someone like a Billy Zane when you know that you have him just for the day versus the entire shoot? Is it? I mean, because I know a lot of times, like with Eric Roberts, like a lot of indie films, they'll grab some of these stars. Like I just saw a movie that the Asylum put out called Planet Dune, and they
Mm-hmm.
had Sean Young in there, and that's her name on the cover. Um, and she didn't phone it in. She actually did really well.
It's great.
I was pleasantly surprised. But she was there. It looked like she was there probably more than her one day. I mean, it looked like like you think she was in there for a scene. I think she was in there for probably a couple of days. But is it more difficult to direct from that angle, like knowing that you're only going to get maybe your big star on the box only for a day or two,
You
and
know,
can you ever stretch out their time, or is that cause the producers to have kittens?
So here's the thing with indie, if you're making $100 million Marvel movie, you're shooting for 6 months. You're doing about an eighth of a page a day. Okay. So on that type of movie, you've got all the time in the world to get to know each actor and their quirks and and how to get the best performance out of each person. On an indie film, you're taking that same amount of final movie, you're making a 90-minute movie or a 2 hour movie, and you're doing it in such a fraction of the time. I mean, what's typical is a 3 week, 4 week, 5 week shoot. That's very, very typical for indie films. So if you think about
That's a
that,
lot.
yeah, that's a tenth of the time. Okay. So you're working, so this is a long way around to answer your question, but whether it's a 1 day role or they're there for the whole 5 weeks, man, you don't have time to just sort of get to know somebody and hope they give you a good performance. Every minute on set is vital, right? Whether it's a 1 day role or the lead, and so everybody's just got to be locked in. You're locked in, and you've done some prep. There's always some prep. I don't do rehearsal, but I'll do table work, and I will, whenever possible, I'll take my cast out for a good meal prior to our first day on set. So I always do that as a way of, like, to me, that personally, that's more important than rehearsal, because I find, and this is even as somebody who comes from a theater background where rehearsal is everything, right? I spent my 20s doing directing theater in Chicago, where you would rehearse for 6 or 8 weeks and then you'd put up the show. But I've discovered in making film that, there's enough time each day when you're setting up the lights, you can go through the next scene, and you get a little bit fresher performance if you didn't rehearse it to death. That's for me personally. Other directors work differently, but I do think it's extremely important if I can get my let's say two actors are going to play a couple, like in Namaka. If I my Alex and my Namaka, I just took them out for lunch, and that's and we had a nice, leisurely 2 hour lunch. And yeah, we did a little book work, went through the script a little bit, talked about the characters. But what's more important is just to get to know them as people. So even, like Billy Zane did one day, but I had a nice phone call with him ahead of time to just talk about the part and talk about what the expectations were going to be on set. Same thing with David Howard Thornton. He, I took him out for dinner the night before we shot. And so, so just so he would get to know me a little bit, and so that, develop a little bit of trust and assure him that it's going to be a fun day on set the next day, and that he'd get to play and create a character that he wants to create. Right. So, because I'm very
Right.
collaborative. I want the actors to bring their own uh, something to the role.
Yeah, like you said, there's no small roles.
Yes,
Yeah, every
right,
role is critical.
absolutely.
Uh, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. When you see a lot of times you hear that, and I'm sure, the actors hear it too. They're not immune to this. When someone like a Sean Young is doing an asylum movie, there's a lot of people that might be talking about that. Like, really? Is that what
Yeah,
she's down to? Because they have, they have that low budget, reputation. The
yeah.
6 or 7. But the fact of the matter is, it's work, and like you said,
Yeah, there's so, for anybody who looks down on an actor who, maybe once they were, oh, okay, you used to do studio movies, now you're doing these low budget indie films, what's wrong with you? I have so much more respect for the actors who want to work, or like an Eric Roberts, somebody who's known for, he'll probably say yes if you make him an offer, right? Like, I have
right,
such respect for that, because again, it's not about it's really not about that. They're not chasing a paycheck. They're doing it because they
no,
love it.
no,
And
yeah,
because it's the so I have so much. There's so many actors who used to be famous, and you have no idea where they are, what they're doing. They're not acting, they're not doing anything right now. And why is that? And maybe because, I used to be in this, and now I don't get that anymore, and so I'd rather just stay home. I don't know. Everybody has different motivations, but man, the ones who enjoy working and understand it, and understand, oh, okay, this is going to be an indie film. Yeah, it's low budget, but I get to show up on set, and I get to act for a living. That's that's
right.
that's pretty cool. So, I mean,
It was nice to see Jamie Kennedy have a lead role. I was like, well,
yes,
I was very impressed with that, and I do know, because like I said, I watched some of your interviews. I
yeah,
do know that Scream is, huge, and you love Scream, and you're talking about Randy Meeks, and how you got Jamie to come out there to play the role. It's like Randy Meeks got, faked his death, went on an island, and then came back 25 years, and here and he's Alex. It's like, that's a good way of putting it. And I love the fact that he's in the lead role. He's one of the three people to carry the movie.
that's right.
And I thought that was really nice, because a lot of times, again, it's like, yes, Billy Zane's a great actor, but man, sometimes these actors, they just, and you hear people talk about it all the time, right, Frank? You always hear about, they're so good, they're so good, they're so good, and then they get one day's work, or they get one scene. It's like, how come you can't write, like,
Right.
I saw this one movie where they had Amanda Weiss,
Mhm.
and it was supposed to be two there were supposed to be two parts in this movie, and the director, who was a screenwriter, says, you know what, screw it, here's what I'm going to do, because one of the stars didn't show up, the actors didn't show up to play. He went back, rewrote the script, and combined both those two actors that had left the project. He combined it with Amanda's role, and Amanda got a co-lead. And when we were watching her movie, we're watching the movie. There's one thing we were happy about. We're going like, finally, someone used her. So finally, someone gave her a real meaty chunk, like a real
Yeah,
role. Because they just don't get that. They'll get a scene, or
yeah,
or it's like, yes, it's work, and they're there for the day. But if you ask any horror fan, like, what would you rather see? Would you rather see Kane Hodder come out for, out of the birthday cake for 2 minutes? Or would
right,
you like to see him play, or would you like to see him play a cop, trying
right.
to help down, fans are going to sit there and say, yeah, bring him, put him in uniform, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
So,
that was a treat for me with Jamie, because I knew that his character was going to be throughout the movie, and that his character has a really nice arc to it, right? So he's not just showing up and doing. He's not um he's he's not the same in the first scene as he is in the end of the movie, right? So his
right,
interactions with Alex changes him. He goes from being a cynic to maybe a little bit more of a believer through the course of events. And I think that's one of the things Jamie appreciated, was getting to show different sides of him. He gets to be funny at some scenes. He gets to be more serious in some scenes, right? But never over the top funny, right? Like his character
yeah,
is just naturally funny. And I wrote a few good jokes, I think, for him. But overall, it's a more grounded role, right? Than some of the other stuff he's been asked to do. And I really like that, because I think of Randy as a more serious, grounded role. So even though he's big and over the top, Randy in the original Scream and Scream 2 is the horror expert. And yeah, and even as I was writing this character, I can't say I wrote it with Jamie Kennedy in mind, but I wrote it with the archetype of this character being somebody who's going to have all the answers, or thinks he knows he has all the answers, but he doesn't really have all the answers. I was basing that archetype on Randy Meeks, right? The character, the self-proclaimed expert, who maybe isn't always right, because he isn't always right. And so then when it came time for casting, I thought to myself, this is a Randy Meeks type role. I wonder what the heck Jamie Kennedy's been up to lately. Because I couldn't think of a movie I'd seen him in the past 5 years at the time that I was casting this. So I just looked him up on Instagram and saw, oh, he's been doing a lot of stand-up comedy. And then I saw his whole bit where he's a podcaster. He wears these Hawaiian shirts. I was like, my goodness, it's like, it really just sort of fell in my lap, where I go, I wrote a character that's pretty much where Jamie Kennedy is is at in his own career. So I think he's going to respond to this pretty well, and he did.
yeah, that's awesome. Let me go to the chat real quick and say
Right?
our good friend John is here. Um, and he mentions that he says Amanda Weiss is super cool to hang out with. He got to hang out with her and the rest of the Nightmare on Elm Street cast with Danny, and he met Robert with Danny when he met Robert England at the bar. See, JB's doing cons and doing a great podcast. Yeah, he's a pretty fun podcaster too.
Yeah. Funny guy.
He's
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, he's got a really sharp wit too. Um, he's one of those guys that he'll be sitting there talking to you, and you're sitting there, and then you'll get in your car and you'll drive, and you'll get almost home, and then you realize that he's just been fucking with you all the time when you guys were
Right.
talking.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely. Jamie's one of these guys that's he's a lot smarter than he lets on, right? Like his persona is this goofy guy, but he's thinking circles around his guests some of the times, and it's fun. It's fun to see that.
so how did you get involved in the business, Frank? Because you've had some really good success, and I'm sure it's been very hard earned.
Yes.
But where did you get your start at? I mean, and what led you down? What led you down the path to
Yeah.
become a director?
Yeah, just loving movies. So it's hard earned is right, because nobody lets you in. There's no, there's no. I make this joke about the original Muppet movie, where it's who is it? Is it Orson Welles at the end? The studio plays the studio head. and they walk in. He says, "I'm Kermit the Frog, and these are my friends, and we're here to be in Hollywood, right?" And I think it's Orson Welles. He's chomping on his
I think you're
cigar,
right.
and he's chomping on his cigar, and he looks him over, and he gets on his intercom to his secretary, and he says, "Prepare the standard rich and famous contract for Kermit the Frog and friends." And then they all cheer, and it's the end of the movie. I joke about this because when I was a kid and I saw that movie for the first time, I didn't understand that was a joke, right? I literally thought that's how it works. And so, for better or worse, I started down this path probably at age 5 or 6, watching the Muppet movie, going, all I need to do is make my way to Los Angeles, right? Get in the room with one of these studio heads, and
Yeah.
they'll give me the standard rich and famous contract. So it took me many years later now I get the joke that nobody gets that contract, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
hard work. It's hard, and you hear, because now, like I said, I go to a lot of these Q&As, and I'll hear from a lot of celebrities, and they, even at the top of their game, they're hustling. They're the reason they're staying at the top. Somebody like a George Clooney, right, or Robert Downey Jr. These guys, they're not resting on their laurels. They're out there thinking about what's the next right move for them, and I have a lot of respect for that. So yeah, for me, I mean, gosh, I never, I didn't think, when I was a kid or in high school, I didn't think, oh, I can be a filmmaker. I didn't know who made films, or they seemed like they were made by very fancy, special people in Hollywood. And I'll never be that. I'm just like a Midwest middle class kid. Nobody's going to give me anything. But I started doing theater. Theater was more accessible. Theater was something that I didn't need a lot of money to do, right? I could just get together with some friends, and I could write something, and then a few days later I can put it up on stage for an audience. And so I started doing that, and I went to the theater school at DePaul University. Very good conservatory training, where myself and some other students of my class, we started a theater school, a theater company, a professional company in Chicago after I graduated, and because Chicago is a great town for that, for theater. And I was honing my skills doing that, and I started just making short films as a hobby, sort of as for fun. In the early days of YouTube, you could do a short film, something funny, 5 minutes, and I had my actor friends, right, and it didn't necessarily have to be very good. You could just put it up there and instantly get responses from people. And now,
Right.
as long as I could make somebody laugh in 3 or 4 minutes, put it up on YouTube and start saying, "Oh, wow, I got a few hundred views." I thought that was so cool, right? That, a few hundred views, that's, when I put on a play in a 50-seat black box theater in Chicago, you'd spend a lot of time, a lot of money. It would run for 6 weeks. And at the end of the day, a few hundred people had seen it. Okay. Like that's, that was considered success for me, running a small black box theater. Now I make a short film in a fraction of the time with a fraction of the money, put it on YouTube. I get that same number of views in one day. Wow, this is amazing. Now to be successful on YouTube, you have to have millions and millions of views. But when I make a movie, the potential audience for that movie is absolutely limitless, right? Or like The Employer is a movie I made, gosh, 2013 now. It's 12 years old. Wow, 14 years old.
Yeah.
My
Really
goodness.
14.
But it's still finding audience, right? Like every few days, somebody
Oh
will find
yeah.
me on social media, and they'll say, "Oh my God, I saw that Malcolm McDowell movie you did. That was a lot of fun." So that really appealed to me. So I just started to say, okay, I told myself, I'm going to try to make each short film I do a little more sophisticated than the one before, right? And so it was a learning experience for me. And so I didn't go to film school, right? I like making films was my film school, and um, and so I kept making them a little more sophisticated, and I would read everything I could on the subject of, so I could understand cameras, lenses, lighting, that kind of stuff, right? And uh, and then eventually one of my short films I thought was good enough that I'm going to enter it into some film festivals. And so I did that. And I didn't really even at that point understand that there was a whole community out there of like-minded filmmakers. I was very much just, it was just me and my creativity and my friends sort of entertaining ourselves until I went to my first film festival, right? I had a short film that got into the East Lansing Film Festival in Michigan. And it just so has, so I drove up there from Chicago, and I was very excited to show my, 15-minute film as part of a set of movies. Well, it just so happened that Michael Moore was premiering one of his movies. I think it was Sicko. And he because he was from there, he always premiered his movies at this film festival. Well, I had no frame of reference for like a film like an A-list film festival versus a B-list film festival. I had never been to Sundance or Cannes or anything, or and so I
Right.
go to the East Lansing Film Festival, but it happened to be the same night that Michael Moore's premiering his latest movie. They and the university there that this festival was attached to had a hospitality department. So they had put the hospitality students in charge of running this film festival, and they did an amazing job. So there was red carpet, there was press, there was a VIP room that had a pizza buffet and a masseuse, a massage table. And this was my first like foray into Hollywood, like because I walked in, I said I'm one of the filmmakers, and they treated me like a star, and man, I was hooked. Like that was really really cool. And then seeing my film with a huge audience, and they're laughing at all the right places, and they all applauded at the end, and I got that same, you know, endorphin hit that I would get when I was producing theater, right? And so that was really the start of me thinking that I could do this for real, for full time, and just start talking to other people, and made the decision to move to LA, and started by saying, well, who do I know? Do I know anybody? Do I know anybody? I didn't. I said, well, I didn't know anybody, but you know what? I had Facebook, and when you're on Facebook, you've got everybody you went to high school with, right? And everybody you went to college with, and like people I used to know. And some of them had moved to LA, and so I just started saying, hey, I'm trying to make movies. And suddenly so-and-so has a cousin who works at a studio. You should get lunch with that person, And so you start from a point of saying, gee, I don't know anybody. But if you really sit down and think about it, yes, you do. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I used what I had to increase my network, and, and try to get my scripts into as many hands as I could until good things started to happen for me.
Yeah, I mean, I that's exactly I like how you said that. Like you sit down, you really start thinking about the people who are there, that can reach out and to help you. I mean, that's a really good thing to have. I mean, yeah, sometimes there are people that roll into town cold. I mean, back in the '60s and '70s, that was like a thing.
Right.
People get on the bus and they go out to Hollywood, and as soon as they get out, and then there was nothing there for them, because they were just all they had was their hopes and dreams,
Yep.
and you can't really you can't feed yourself on those very long.
That's
Um,
right.
but yeah, to come out there and get a little taste of what it's like to to be in that atmosphere, man, I could see how that could be impressionable, and you want to get back there. You want to have that same feeling, like I want to do this again, to have that same feeling again.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, Michael Moore. Now he does this festival now. He does it in the northern part of the state, in the UP now.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah, yeah. I didn't. Yeah, God, it's been a long time since it's actually been a long time since I've heard from him that name at all.
Yeah. 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 I don't know what he's
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know what
I
he's
don't
been
know what he's been
doing.
up to. Yeah.
Um, so what was the first film that you worked on? Let's talk about your very first film. You're in Hollywood. Um, I mean, I know I can see your IMDb, but I want to do it this way because let's just walk a little through it, because I want to see some of those lessons that you learned as you went on. Because did you have anybody at all that had prepped you or told you what to look for, or did when you did your first movie, did you have
Yeah,
a mentor or someone who inspired you,
yeah.
or was it just all by trial and error?
My first, well, I'll go back to the first time I worked with an actual crew because back to my origin story where I was just me and my friends for a while, and then like I said, I wanted to get more sophisticated with each movie, right? Well, the first few I did, it was literally just me and a camera, right? I was the entire crew. So in order to get more sophisticated, I knew I needed to. I knew that there were things I didn't know, right? Like you know, I knew I needed a sound person because I don't know too much about sound, but I know I need a lighting guy. I want to work with a real crew. And so I had a friend who was one of the members of my theater company who I was saying, yeah, I think I want to start taking this film thing more serious, but I don't even know where to start with that. And so my friend, um, said, "Well, I know a couple of guys. They work on Oprah. Okay, so Oprah, she'll film for 6 months a year. This was in Chicago, right? She'll film for 6 months and then she's off for 6 months. It's a pretty good gig, right? So
Right.
these guys, they're the camera crew for Oprah. They love to work on something fun, something narrative when they're on their downtime. I'm going to introduce you. So that was it. That was the start for me. Was I got to meet it was these three guys who, it was a team that, one guy was the camera guy, one was the sound guy, and the other did the editing. And they're like, yeah, anything that's not Oprah related when we're in the off season, we love it. Let's do it. Let's work on something together. And I said, okay, I want to learn. I want to learn everything I can about what an actual film from start to finish. I'm not going to make the same assumptions that I did when it was just me and a camera. I want to learn from you guys. So take me through everything, the casting process and locking the script and finding locations and all of that stuff. I was like, hold my hand through this process, right? And I remember, and they did, and it was great, and it was awesome. I had to have the wisdom to know what I didn't know, to constantly say I want to learn or ask all the questions, right? And I remember being told my first time sitting there on an actual what would be an actual proper film set where we have video village, right, and a monitor for the director and a director's chair and all this stuff. And I remember my one friend who I would consider a mentor, right? She said to me, you're going to want to look at the actors. This is because I came from a theater background, right? So when they're
Right.
recording the scene, when you say action, you're going to want to look at the actors. Don't look at the actors. Look at the monitor because you're making a movie. So what the actors are really doing doesn't matter at all. What's being captured on the monitor is the only thing that matters, right? I was like, okay, that makes sense, right? And I remember getting there, sitting there. I'm in the director's chair. There's a monitor right in front of me. The actors are off to my left, right? I remember I go, action. And I'm looking at the actors. And my friend was right there. She taps me on the shoulder. She said, look at the monitor. And I was like, oh, yeah, right. And I kept looking over at the actors. It really did take me a while to understand because I was mesmerized by how different it was, because again, I come from a theater directing background, right? So when I've got two actors on a stage in front of me and I'm directing them, what I'm looking at is exactly what the audience is going to look at. That's what I was used to. It's very, very different in film, right? So that
Yeah.
whatever the camera is capturing is that's all that matters, and that's so whether I need another take or if I need to make any adjustments, I'm not going to know that unless I've seen it on the monitor. So yeah, that was an early lesson for me. And then I remember the first time I got into an editing bay, uh, I I was really mesmerized by you've got 24 frames per second and the difference it if you just take a couple two, 3 frames off of a shot, right? Or you add 2 or 3 frames, you're talking about a fraction of a second. and it matters. It makes a difference. And these are things that, anybody who works in film is going to roll their eyes and say, yeah, that's obvious. We know that, right? This is our craft. But when you first get into it, I was like, man, I would put two shots together. You have somebody say, I love you. And then the response, the next person, you're going to cut to their response. And then they say, I love you too. You might be surprised, like if you did a third of a second longer or a third of a second shorter for that, where that cut is between I love you too, it could totally change how you feel about that relationship. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Is yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, editing is everything. I mean,
yeah.
especially, yeah, well, I've always said this, and tell me if you agree with it. Do you think the best editors are directors?
It's funny, right? Because Sean Baker just won an Oscar for Anora, and I was shocked. He won. I mean, he swept the Oscars, right? But he won an editor Oscar, which was so surprising because he wrote the movie, he directed the movie, so he knows exactly how it's supposed to cut together. And the Oscars are given out by your peers, so it was really interesting that that professional editors would acknowledge Sean Baker, who is a writer director, as the best editor of the year. They're sort of talking themselves out of work in a way. So,
Wow.
uh,
You know what? Let's go off topic just for a quick second, but
uh-huh.
that's because. So, what do you think about the state of the Oscars today? I mean, the last, maybe right before the maybe it's right before the pandemic, all the way through today. Do you think the Oscars have just gone screaming off the rails? Um,
I,
it,
I
it,
remember, I remember the really good years, the Billy Crystal
yeah,
years. I remember being a kid, and I was a kid when Silence of the Lambs swept, right? And I was too young to watch it, and I was begging my parents to let me watch Silence of the Lambs because we watched the Oscars. I remember watching the Oscars every year as a kid. I just so mesmerized by it, and I'm like, there's this movie that everybody's talking about it. It's too scary for kids, and so that I remember when I finally got to watch Silence of the Lambs, and it was really great, and it deserved all those Oscars. Yeah, is there a little bit of a disconnect between Hollywood and what's entertaining out there? Yeah, sure. But
'cause I watched. Did you watch Nora?
yeah, I watched the Nora. I liked the Nora. So I liked it. I liked the lead actress. It was a very, like, um, I like that kind of performance, right? Where that's just it felt
You,
very.
you,
It felt
you, you know,
risky. There was something risky and exciting about it. If you're saying you hated the movie, that's totally
yeah,
fine because the thing is, this stuff is subjective, right? And that's part of why we
sure.
love it. If everybody loved the same movies, I mean, then
I, I agree.
life's more exciting when we can have a good discussion about what worked for you, what didn't work for you, about this movie
Yeah,
or the other.
Nora did not.
And so, and I think I mean, what do I want to say about that? My own movies, some people love them passionately and some people hate them passionately. And that means I think
Really?
for
Do
me,
you get hate that bad?
yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure, for sure. So
Wow.
for one of my favorite reviews of Namaka on Rotten Tomatoes is somebody
Uh,
said, "What the hell is this movie? I let my wife choose. Never again." So that's my favorite review because I may be responsible for breaking up someone's marriage because she wanted to watch this movie. Look, it's an independent film. It's a low budget movie. It's a very, it's a movie where you got I'm requesting an attention span from you, right? So with all of my movies, there's a lot of dialogue, right? And so I get if somebody goes, oh God, that movie was boring. Yeah, okay, that wasn't for you. So as opposed, but to me, that's much more exciting. I'd much rather have some people love it and some people hate it than make a movie that everybody just shrugs their shoulders and say, oh, okay, that exists. I don't want to do that. So so maybe that's what appealed to me about Honora, is that it was so out there and weird and different. And look, I don't know Sean Baker personally, so I have no dog in this fight, and so it's totally fine for you to say, that the movie didn't work for you.
I thought what
Um,
was really interesting with him was the fact that, because after that Brazilian movie they were talking about with the
mm,
transsexual
mm,
actor,
mm,
that was actually going to be the favorite. That was the leading up to the Oscars. It was the favorite to win,
mm.
and all of a sudden, right before, like maybe like, well, I think it was like a month out.
Yeah,
Suddenly they brought up past, stuff that the actor wrote on social media, and all of a sudden, all that hard work that they put into it, all of a sudden they started backlashing, I guess, canceling
right.
him. And then Honora got picked up right the last minute, and Baker was quoted as saying that the studio spent more money promoting Honora to the Oscars than it did in making they paid more for the
Yeah,
Oscars than they did for the movie.
yeah, yeah. Because somebody
Uh,
wanted those shiny statues, but and
mhm.
it's part of marketing. So a movie like that, they make a conscious decision. If we can get awards buzz, more people will see the movie. So it's again, this is, maybe I'm Pollyannish, but I resist being cynical about any of this stuff, right? So it's like, so I still watch the movie. I invite my friends over. I have a little Oscar party each year, and so a movie, like that being a low budget indie film getting as much attention as it did, is it going to go down in history as in the same category as Citizen Kane and The Godfather? No, it won't. But
No.
I applauded that it won so many awards because it was a low budget indie film, and I mean yeah, and I had gone to one of these Q&As with Sean Baker where he talked about what was it, Coney Island, I think they filmed at, and he said, "Oh yeah, we didn't have permits for that. We did it guerrilla style because he comes from the
Yeah.
no budget world, and that's what he was used to." So to think that, oh gosh, they're stealing shots without permits on a movie that's going to go on and win a bunch of Oscars, that's kind of cool for me as a scrappy indie filmmaker, as a guy who never got permission to make anything. You know what I mean? Because I think Sean Baker comes from that same,
See, I guess the problem. I guess the problem I had with this is the fact that I just I got new glasses, and they're absolutely just killing my eyes. I
yeah.
cannot I cannot focus at all with these on, and it feels like I'm in a fog.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna have to call them up and say these are not working at
Yeah.
all. But I guess what really gets me is the fact that it just wasn't like the movie itself wasn't really peer driven. Did the peer did they spend enough money to buy votes, and did it actually win on its merits? And
Right.
it's
Right.
like
But see.
i
But
like
see.
i like films like that. I want films to win on merit, not
Right.
by who can pay more, who can, like watching Frances McDormand, and it's like she won for Nomadland. And come on, really? Jesus Christ, nobody even talks about that anymore. Nobody.
Right.
I haven't heard anybody talk about Nora, and it's
Right.
just like, and these movies, they used to stick with you.
Right.
The movies that will win, that will stick with you, and be an inspiration.
Yeah. Well,
An
I don't.
inspir.
I mean, if you can name a great movie from last year that it stole the Oscar from, that's the thing, is that there aren't as many great movies, and so that
Yeah.
could be the discussion. Is that I mean, a movie like Howard's End, right, where they spent, it's the '90s, so we're going to spend $30 million on a costume period piece drama. That doesn't happen. Nobody does that, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I think the last movie that got anywhere promoted like that during Oscars was what, Downton Abbey, maybe.
Yeah, possibly.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
And
uh, um. So you're back in the editing bay.
yeah,
You're learning how to edit. You're going like,
yeah.
man, this takes forever. You come out of there the first day or the first night, and I'm sure you're exhausted, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now,
I mean, it's,
what's it?
the thing about editing is a very different, it's such a different process. So it's like filmmaking is very lonely at the beginning, right? If I'm in the script phase, or I'm, trying to get investors, it's just me, you know, trying to motivate myself to get on the phone with another potential investor or whatever, take another meeting. It's very exhausting. It's very lonely. Editing is also very lonely. It might be me and one other person. Um, and then the production itself is the opposite, because there's maybe 30 people or 50 people a day, right? And you're trying to remember everybody's names, and you build a little community. It's very different. It's kind of, I enjoy it. I enjoy that there's these specific different phases to what I do, right? Because I don't know whether I'm an introvert or an extrovert, but I sometimes I like being around a lot of people, and sometimes I don't.
Right, right. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Uh, I was going to ask you about Namaka. Now
Mhm.
you do all you write all your movies. Uh, when did you get into how were you a writer first off? I mean, that was the first thing you picked up was writing. Was that the
Yeah.
first thing you had in the toolbox was
Yes,
screenwriting?
yes. I've always liked writing. I think if you had asked me when I was 12 what I wanted to do for a living, I would have said like either great American novelist or a journalist of some sort, right? So I was always interested in writing, some kind of writing. Well, when I started writing plays, I was often accused of writing plays that felt more like movies than plays. And I wasn't sure what that meant, because you can do it, you can set a scene on an airplane, on a stage. You just use two chairs and you use your imagination, right?
Right.
You can go anywhere you want. So when I was writing plays and I was told this feels more like a movie, I wasn't quite sure what that meant. Looking back on it now, it was because I was trying to
Compliment.
yes, I was trying to make them as
Yeah.
entertaining as hell, right? To build a lot of tension, and use all this stuff that I knew about, character development and the hero's journey and all that good stuff. There's a reason why there's a formula. It's because it works, right? And so, and everybody wants a good script. Everybody in this town is looking for good scripts, and so that's really where I felt I could bring something to the table, because everybody wants to direct, like a lot of people want to direct. I'm not even claiming I'm better than somebody else at directing. But it, and again, nobody's tapping me on the shoulder and hiring me to direct. But if I can write the thing, and I can get people behind my vision, then I can bring it into existence, in the hopes that there's a reason this will, people want something original and different. And there's still, there's people complain about the Hollywood system, right? People complain about, oh, there's no original movies, or like, why did Honora get all this attention? Well, they're not going to give the awards to the latest Marvel movie, so, or the latest sequel. When you see box office results from the studios, it's like, I looked at last year's, if you looked at the top 100 performing movies of the year, there was something like, it was less than 10 of those top 100 were not sequels or based on some sort of IP, i.e., an actual original film, right? So Hollywood's not making anything original. Everything is based on something, because they're making their decisions fear-based decisions, right? So
Yeah.
no executive wants to lose their job because they greenlit a movie that nobody liked. But if it's based on pre-existing IP, then that same executive can say, "Oh, the fans just didn't show up for that IP. It's not my fault. It's the IP
Right.
was the problem."
What do you think about the Renaissance now? Is we're hearing about it the last last month or so.
Yeah.
With I guess it was Shelby Oaks was the
Mhm.
first one, and then Iron Lung, Backrooms, Obsession. I mean, Talk to Me.
Yeah.
Some of these directors that are being found through YouTube.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that? I mean, do you think it's a flash in the pan, or is this going to be the new normal?
Oh, I think a little bit of both. I mean, it's everybody. First of all, everybody's on YouTube, right? YouTube is where it's at. So people are spending a lot of their time on YouTube, and it's taking away from the movie business, right? Because that it's just it's it's people's habits, you know. So people just aren't. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it, right? And part of it is our phones and the shortened attention spans that everybody has, right? And it's
Yeah,
like the just even the sitting down to watch something for 2 hours sounds exhausting in today's world, right? Like the pace of the world is such. So people are out there on YouTube, and so the you can get an original movie from someone if they, because the filmmaker is bringing with them their fan base from YouTube, right? So it's like it's actually sort of based on the same um, risk aversion that the studios have, right? The reason they want to greenlight a pre-existing IP is because then, oh, okay, we can assume people will show up to see this because they love Star Wars or whatever. In the case
right,
of these a YouTuber, if they have 20 million followers already, then they know that, okay, that person's going to tell their fans to show up at the theater, and it's working. It's working now. So what's really exciting is, so everybody's stuck on their phones, everybody's watching YouTube. Well, now, thanks to this handful of next generation filmmakers who are, they have romanticized going to the movies, right? Like they didn't have to, they could have just kept making YouTube videos, they would have been fine. But these handful of guys that wanted to make a 2 hour thing that would be watched by a collective audience. And so then they tell all their, I mean, you think about it, it's actually a beautiful thing to have a YouTuber, his relationship with those 20 million fans is a one-to-one relationship where he gets on YouTube and everybody who follows that person is sitting on their own couch or in their own bed, or they're sitting on the subway, right? It's very lonely. We live in a very lonely world. And what these YouTubers have done is they've said, hey, there's a magical place that you can go to be with all these other fans for 2 hours, right? And have this collective experience. So I'm really excited about it. I'm jazzed about it, that these movies are doing so well. And so, whether or not that means, they're going to, more and more YouTubers, that'll be the path to get into the movie business. Okay, maybe. But my takeaway is it's proving that going to the movies is still a rewarding experience, and young people are discovering the joy of the movies now, and so I
yeah.
really get a kick out of that.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, I've seen two movies, from low budget movies that have started out, with micro budgets, and then actually three.
uh,
The first one I saw was Skinamarink,
yep.
which phenomenal movie. Um, I enjoyed that one, and then what else have I seen? I saw Backrooms. No, 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 no. And of course, Good Boy was another movie
Yeah.
that came from out of nowhere, and I absolutely love that movie. It's probably the best movie I've seen this year so far. Absolutely loved it, and thought it was phenomenal. It was so inventive and so creative,
Yeah.
and I
And
just
now, I mean,
love.
if you see the behind the scenes of how that movie was, how I was talking about your
Yeah,
average
I
indie
watched
film
it
has a 5 week shoot. And what was this? This was about 3 years they
3 years.
took. Yeah, it's crazy, wild. But you can do that when the lead actor is your dog, right?
Right. I mean, I watched the behind and I listened to the commentary, and it was just like, and you see him working so hard, and he says, "Yeah, every day they're going out there trying to get a scene in," and the dog was so smart and it has
Yeah.
so much emotion to it. I mean, his face. I mean, it was just a perfect combination. Now that's the kind of movie that needs to win an Oscar. That kind of inventiveness and
Right.
storytelling is just sorely lacking these days.
Yep.
Which is really why I like watching, when I was watching your films, and I really appreciated how well grounded your storytelling was. And I liked Namaka. I thought that was a very creative movie.
The-
Um,
And
I really enjoyed.
allow me to
Go
make
ahead.
a shameless plug for anybody watching who hasn't seen it yet. I just let them know where they can see it, because this is it's man, these it's every time you choose to watch an independent film, you are helping independent filmmakers like me survive, because we need the audience, right? And so
Right,
this movie it's not going to just pop up on your feed, because what the studio system's doing is, whether it's Netflix or Disney, or any of the studios, they're spending millions of dollars to tweak that algorithm to keep you watching. Once you're on Disney Plus, they're going to keep you on Disney Plus, or once you're on Netflix, they're trying to keep you there. So an independent film, you have to seek it out, and that's what's making it harder now than ever. Because even because I can say you can watch Namaka for free on Tubi, where it's ad supported. That supports the filmmaker, but you have to go on Tubi. It's not going to pop up on its own. You're going to have to do a search
no,
for it, and so it's you got to search by the name. And even when I do that, I have to type in the whole darn name before they, before, okay, fine, here it is. And so, or it's on, you can rent the darn thing for $4 on Amazon or Fandango, even YouTube actually. And so then, but you're really, that's going to support an independent filmmakers. That money's not just, it's not going to my pockets. It allows me to, to pay for a crew. I mean, about 30 people worked on this movie, which is a lot less than work on a Marvel movie. But
right.
Marvel and Disney and Netflix, they got millions of dollars to spend on the marketing to let people know about their movie. I don't have that. And so when I'm on a podcast like this, it might seem like a shameless plug, but hopefully the audience who's, out there listening, who haven't seen the movie and maybe they're not yet sold on whether or not to give it a shot. I want you guys to know that when you spend that $4 on a rental, it really does matter, and you're voting for more originality by doing that.
Now, did Namaka get a physical media release?
Yes, it is on DVD, and so that's yeah, so the nice thing is, man, when I start, like when The Employer came out, 13 years ago, we had when that got on DVD, you had to do we did an 80,000 DVD pressing, right? So you had to invest a lot of money and hope that people would buy them, right? So nowadays it's really great because it's sort of like an on-demand thing where they'll only make like 10 at a time. Then it's only, you can only buy them through Amazon. I know a lot of people don't like Amazon, don't want to give Amazon their money, but the reality is, for somebody like me, it's my only way to market, right? And so so I'm very proud that you can get Namaka on DVD, but you get it through Amazon, and it's like $20 for a DVD. And it's really nice because I didn't have to put in that investment of getting tens of thousands of copies, because they're made when you order it, they'll, what, I don't know, they make like 30 at a time, and when they sell out, they make 30 more, something like that. Don't quote me on that, of how it's done. I just know that it's not quite the same burden of overhead that it used to be.
Man, 80,000 copies. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, 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 and
Nice.
that's why it was very hard to, why some movies never appeared on physical media, because that's a big upfront investment. You have to be
Right,
confident that you're going to sell those, right?
right, right. Um, yeah. See, John's saying that he's going to check out your movie. Yeah, I agree.
Great, thanks, John.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I liked it very much. Where did you get your? Now I know you shot the movie both on Hawaii and here in the States,
Yes.
mainland in the mainland. Um, what are the idea for Namaka? I'm going to keep you over a couple of minutes if you don't
Good.
mind, so we talk a
Fine.
little bit about it. Um,
Yeah.
where did you get the idea for the film itself? I mean, were you a fan of Disney movies? Because the first thing I think of when I was watching it was thinking about this is, because the resemblance between this and the Little Mermaid, the one
Uh-huh.
I saw, it was more, it's definitely more aimed for adults. I mean, Namaka,
Right.
I wouldn't say. Um, though I thought it was more like the Little Mermaid movie too, in the sense like it had a couple of it had some horror elements to it, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror film. I thought it
Right.
was more of an adventure type movie. Um, I liked it. I liked it
Yeah.
for that. It wasn't gory and all that, and it wasn't cheesy. It was like a really heartfelt movie. And at the end, he had to make his choice. He have to, do you go with what got you there, your family, or do you go off with this exotic beauty, and who knows what might happen. I think that's a really interesting. I liked how you presented the story. Um, and I thought it was well thought out. I thought it was an interesting idea and really well done. But obviously, it goes down to not only the story but your cast. And
Right.
I thought the young lady who you picked to play Namaka, I thought she was great.
Yeah.
So tell us how you got to how you came to the idea for the story, and then
Sure.
share us a little bit how you got your actress.
Sure. So the story I started with, I wanted to make a modern mythology, right? So I studied mythology as part of my education, and how these stories translate over time, right? And so there's pieces of pieces of King Arthur that show up in Star Wars, and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Whereas I've always sort of been interested in that. So I set out to do a modern retelling of some sort of mythological character. And at first I was going to make my first draft of this was actually based on Greek mythology. Okay. So the first draft of this was very different than what the movie ended up being, but it was like a lighthouse keeper and this, a woman is washes up to shore. She brings him in. He nurses her back to life. They fall in love. Later, he finds out she's a magical creature. And when I wrote that, it was before the first Aquaman movie came out. Then I saw the first Aquaman movie, and I swear the first 20 minutes of that movie was the exact same plot as this movie that I had just written. And I was
Oh,
so mad. I was so angry. And this has happened to me before. Where like I think I'm writing something super original, and then I'll show it to a friend, and they'll go, have you seen, you better check out this other movie because it's a little too darn similar. So I was so mad. I'm like, I can't make this movie now because people are going to think it's a ripoff of Aquaman. So, and it just happened to be around the same time that I was going with my family on a vacation to Hawaii. And so I was on vacation in Hawaii. And while there, I went to a few museums and I learned about Hawaiian mythology. I had seen, it's funny that you brought up The Little Mermaid because I was thinking about Moana, which is based on Hawaiian mythology. And I went to a museum and I'm hearing about these demigods, and they were saying, yeah, one of the weird quirks about these Hawaiian gods or these demigods is that they're obsessed with humans, right? And then I thought about that scene in Moana where they sing "You're Welcome," right? The song that Maui sings, where it's all about all these things that he's done for humans because he wants the act, he wants the attention. Okay. And then something popped in my head where I could do a twisted, dark, adult version of that. What if that desire for attention goes wrong? Right. And so that was sort of the impetus of me. And so I sort of took that Greek myth screenplay I had written, knocked it down to the studs, and started writing it around Hawaiian mythology. And I did a heck of a lot of research, and I worked with a Hawaiian cultural advisor to get some of the details right. But ultimately, it's a story about an outsider, right? So it's like the main character is this guy Alex from the mainland who walks into something he doesn't know a whole lot about. And even though he claims that he's trying to learn, we don't really see him doing a lot of that, right? Um, and the Jamie Kennedy character who represents sort of an expat, this guy who's clearly from the mainland, but he's wearing Hawaiian shirts. He's hanging out in the tiki bar. He claims to be an expert, but really he's not, he's more of a grifter, right?
Right,
So,
right,
and because I saw, when I was in Hawaii, I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of that, there's, for better or worse, there's a lot of tension between native Hawaiians and visitors, right? Because so much of their economy is based on tourism, right? But then a lot of tourists can be very disrespectful, and too many outsiders come in, it changes the culture. I was fascinated with all of that. So in some ways, my movie, just sort of became a little bit of a metaphor for commenting on that complexity. Without hitting it too much on the head, because ultimately I just want to entertain people. But also I was aware of the history of like the Tiki movie and the Tiki movement, where, Tiki being a Hollywood concoction, right? A fantasy version of Polynesian culture, right? And so,
right,
so I made some purposeful decisions in my movie to give it sort of an old-fashioned quality to it, right? So when in the middle of the film, when they kiss for the first time, and then the camera pans away, right? I took that from old film noir, like that's how you would do a love scene, right? Back in the old
right.
days. So that was a very purposeful choice. And even with the casting, when I cast leads that I felt reminded me of the leads, the kind of people you might cast if this was in the 50s or the 60s, and but no, the way I did the casting, I cast a very wide net. I did Jamie I approached, he was the first one cast. So I approached Jamie with this script and this role, and when he said yes, and I knew what days he was, the dates he was available to shoot, we started to work backwards from there. And then so for the other two leads, I just did an open casting call where actors would send me their audition tapes, and I had about 800 people submit an audition tape for the lead,
Wow.
for just for Alex, and I had about 500 submit for Namaka, for people trying to play a Hawaiian goddess. And so from those submissions, I whittled it down to about 50.
Were there any familiar were there any familiar names that were trying to get in on it?
Well, I would a little. I mean, people who had been on TV. I mean, I can't claim stars were, knocking down my door to work with me on this one. But I wanted to make discoveries.
Right,
I had already, sort of, the formula that I use in a lot of my movies is two names and then discoveries, right? And so
right,
I had Malcolm and Billy and The Employer. I had Derek Mears and Tony Todd and From Jennifer. This one I had Jamie, and I had David Howard Thornton locked in for one day. And by the way, that was originally, I had written that part for Tony. Like that was going to be my fourth movie with Tony Todd.
mm,
The vagrant who comes in at the beginning, and but he was already sick,
yeah,
unfortunately, when I made my movie. I was happy for happy for me that I was able to work with David, and now I can consider him a friend, and hopefully this is the first of many movies I'll make with David. But I really did want to make discoveries for Alex and Namaka, and have good chemistry between the two of them. And so that's what I did when I did callbacks with my top 15 or 20. I did only the third round callback was in person. Right. So based on the first 800 that did a tape for me, I asked about 50 of them to do a second tape. Right. And on the second tape, I gave them some direction. Right. Um, and then based on those second tapes, I picked, I want to say 15 Alex's and 15 Namakas, and I brought them all together for chemistry reads. And that's how I ended up with the cast that I did.
oh, okay, okay.
Uh,
But really, it was really a lot of energy, a lot of great chemistry here. I mean,
Thank you.
that's what I really liked about the film.
Thank you.
It just flowed really smooth, and it's a very well made film, and
Thank you.
one I
Yeah.
think a lot of fans will want to pick up a copy of. and
And
that's
but
it.
and one last shameless plug is namakamovie.com. That's our website where you've got links to all the different places you can watch it, including the Amazon link to buy a DVD.
Uh, all right. My last question to you
Yep.
is, what are you working on now? You got anything in the pipeline now that that you could talk about, or getting ready
Definitely.
to
I'll,
go? Or?
yes. I have to be vague. I have to be vague for now. But I have two projects, right? So one is another scrappy indie, like all the films that I've done up to this point. I have a really cool screenplay this is that one that I wrote with a co-writer. So this is my first time working with another writer, and man, I can't talk about it yet, but I'm right in the phase now of trying to attach a name actor, and I'm really, really excited. So I've got people reading that script, and so when the right actor says yes, that will trigger a green light, and I'll be back in production. Hopefully, I think in the next couple of months. That's the goal for that. And but I, thing, between now and when the movie comes out, so many things can change, and so hopefully you can have me on again, and I can tell you more about it. But but I'm also have a much bigger like movie that is a horror film, that is a proper horror film, that's the one that I have David Howard Thornton interested in working with me again. And so I'm just doing sort of the Hollywood thing of sending out query letters and taking meetings and pitching a horror movie that I've been working on a script for years. This is sort of my version of a Scream or a Saw. I take all my favorite elements from horror, mash them up in what I think is a new and exciting way. And so but that's when you see some of these movies like Obsession did so well, Sinners did so well. But Terrifier, of course, again, there's an example of a movie that started out with very, very little money, and by the third one, they're making tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I'm
So
so glad. I'm so glad. I mean, I know David's. I know that's happened for him.
yeah,
He's not starving anymore. Um,
uh,
yeah, he really made art is such a interesting horror icon for sure.
yes.
I,
He
I
brought
mean,
a lot to that. He brought a lot to that movie.
and I know a lot of people hear this and they shake their head because they've heard this story before. But this is my favorite David Howard Thornton story.
Uh,
Um, he was doing an interview, and he was doing or on Instagram he's doing a question and answer, and I asked him because I noticed I was watching Terrifier and there's a scene where they're down in the I guess underneath the streets, and there's a scene where there's a cat lady there, and she has all these cats, and Art's down there, and then I noticed how Art is like, he's looking at the cats, he likes the cats, cats come up to him, he's petting the cats, so I saw that and I asked him, so is Art like a cat person? And he goes, absolutely. Our Art loves cats. And I was like, that's like best horror icon ever.
yep,
So he
great.
says, yeah. And then someone says, just cats. He says, no, Art loves dogs too. Just like, you can't sit there, when you watch him cut somebody in half and people going, oh my God, he's awful, it's terrible. It's like,
No, he loves cats and
yeah,
dogs. Yeah,
yeah, but he loves cats. He can't be all that bad.
that's right.
But
That's right.
he just sliced someone in half. Yes, but it's not a cat.
Yeah.
So, all right. We have hit our mark. I've got to catch you over here a little bit longer. I am really sorry. My eyes are just absolutely a mess right now, Frank. So I'm really sorry that I'm sorry I've been doing that all night. But Jesus Christ, I can barely see.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it's terrible. I don't have no idea what's going on. Anyway, we will go ahead and thank everybody in the chat who came out for the show. I appreciate it so much. Tomorrow night, we'll be here with Khalil Neo, and we're going to be talking independent film with a young man from who's made a little franchise of his own, the Tennessee Bigfoot. And so we'll be talking about Tennessee Bigfoot tomorrow, along with he also has written a novel, like a real novel, like the ones you find in Barnes and Nobles. He's written one, got printed, got published, and we'll be talking with him tomorrow night. And looking forward to that. And we're talking about pitching. We're talking about pitching. Our guest we're supposed to have yesterday, a beautiful young lady, Andrea Garces Lopez. She was actually she had to go get ready for a pitch
Uh,
yesterday, and
yeah,
so they were practicing. They're trying, they're going over it, because you know how pitches are.
yeah,
Um, and I told her, says, says we'll be there. Well, I'll be there. Says, take your time. Get your pitch done right. Don't
yeah.
feel like don't rush. We can always reschedule. So, because the pitch is still really important, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yes, and it's nerve-wracking. I just did one, and yeah, it took a lot out of me.
Yeah. All right, boys and girls. We're gonna go ahead and say goodnight to you guys here. We'll see you tomorrow night here at 8 o'clock. Frank, stay for one. If you
Yep.
can't stay there for 1 second, to everybody else, we're gonna say goodnight. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.